From politics and policing to the economy and the environment, we're facing a long list of critical issues. But when it comes to activism, should more artists be speaking out?
Don't push me, cause I'm close to the edge. I'm trying not to lose my head.
From the message by Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five in the 1980s to hip-hop's golden era in the 90s, conditions on the streets have been chronicled in lyrics.
Cops give a damn about a Negro. Pull a trigger, killing, he's a hero.
That tradition continued in the early 2000s with Why by Jadakiss.
Why is Jadakiss as hard as it gets? Why is the industry designed to keep the artists in debt?
An artist more known for her widespread popular appeal and not her politics made waves when she got in formation.
Okay, ladies, now let's get information.
Beyonce came under fire from some law enforcement, but her fans rallied around her. I caught up with Rico Love in Miami via FaceTime. He's worked with a superstar and says artists must be involved in issues.
I think artists have a humongous responsibility, and it's very important for them to speak out, whether it's in a song, whether it's in an interview, whether it's on social media. You must use your platform.
A Tribe Called Quest has been consistent through the years, but Rico Love tells me there's a generation gap.
All you black folks, you must go. All you Mexicans, you must go.
Case in point, he says, is Young Thug.
We having fun, we iced out, we having money.
Young Thug's fans number in the millions, and Rico says he's ready to bridge the gap.
I think it's really important for us who've been in the game for a while to kind of put the pressure on these young artists who got the floor. You got the floor right now, and the streets listen to you, you know, and we need to make sure that the people we trying to reach hear the message.
There's many ways for artists to be expressing their viewpoints, but the question is, should they? Let's find out what our panel has to say. So let me introduce our panel to you. Amadeus joins us. He's a multi-platinum music producer for more than 60 artists, including Chris Brown, J-Lo, Young Thug, and many more. He's also Trey Songz's music director. He's a community advocate, activist, and educator. He sponsors panels to educate the youth about the music industry, and he's also a longtime supporter of our Street Soldiers Push for Peace anti-violence efforts. Amadeus, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
We appreciate it. Also joining us, first time on Street Soldiers, we're very excited to have her. Very talented young woman. Robin Hood is her MC name. She's a hip-hop MC. Her AKA is Miriam Hyman, and she is a classically trained actress. She was trained at the Yale School of Drama, very impressive. And she has also, equally impressive, are her many major television credits on the big networks. You've seen her on Blue Blood. She plays Emil Cooper, the medical examiner there, the one that's always there, right in the middle of looking at the bodies. The Blacklist, and many other big TV shows. And Robin Hood, very happy to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
We appreciate it. Also with us, Chuck Creekmer. He's the CEO of allhiphop.com, one of the premier hip-hop news sites that's out there, period. Chuck, thank you so much for being with us. Chuck, when you saw the Grammys, and you hear this discussion that's been going on, which we've talked about, and we continue to talk about, and people on social media talk about it, do you feel enough artists are speaking out, or do you think that's an unrealistic expectation we have?
I don't think enough are speaking out. I think more should speak out. I think everyone has a voice, and if you happen to have a louder voice and a louder platform to say something, you should absolutely say it. And our people are, the general population is asking for it, why not? And that's the legacy of this country. It's not something that just popped up recently.
Robin, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree with him 100%. I mean, I think if you have a platform, you should use your voice. If not, what's the point, And I think that as an artist, we have multiple messages that we can send. And everything can't just be turn up, Everything can't just be a party and have fun. We are dealing with, social injustices every single day. So I think that it behooves us to speak about it. I mean, why not? We're affected. If you're not directly, trust you're affected indirectly. Your family, friends, somebody has experienced, something in some capacity. So why not speak up?
Amadeus, you work with so many of the biggest names in the business. The pressure that's on artists and just the amount of work, even when you're at the top of your game, to keep your career going and developing and growing, do they have time to really educate themselves about, the nuances and what's going on?
It's all about what matters to you. as an individual. You know, a lot of artists are focused on, like you said, focused on their careers, focused on the music, focused on gaining fans, focused on prospering in a musical way, but not really focused on, like you're saying, the issues that are being dealt with today. And I think it's fear. I think it's fear of possibly losing fans, fear of losing supporters, and you know those are the decisions that some of the artists make. And everybody has a choice, you know. So I don't judge anybody in regards to whether they choose to speak on it or whether they choose not to speak on it. You know, we have a right to decide what we want to do and what we don't want to do. So I respect it either way.
Whether they do or not want to get involved or not. But you volunteer a lot of your time.
Yes. For me, being in the music industry and dealing with what I've dealt with coming up and learning the business and the pros and the cons, I just want to give back and teach people on how to win. You know, how to win, how to be successful. No one gave us the blueprint. No one gave you the blueprint on how to be successful in your area, in your field, and I feel like, why not give them the blueprint? Why allow people to go through what we went through? If we can avoid you from making the same mistakes.
Skip some steps and not make those mistakes. Right. But what about the artists themselves, Chuck? Because I spoke with Rico Love about this, and he said, you know, you have to understand, Lisa, there's no artist right now, in his opinion, that has the attention across the different generations of hip hop. Right. He said, you go back to Tupac, you look at what Tupac was saying, some very conscious things, what we call conscious, but he was just right on the nerve of what was happening and a lot of people were going through. But he also touched a lot of, you know, generations, and he was in his 20s. So Rico said there's really not anybody like that has that kind of broad spectrum. Do you agree with that or you disagree with that?
I totally agree with that. There's different levels to this, and one level, first of all, is political education that artists just don't have now. I mean, you have to look at Tupac for all that he was, and he was the son of Black Panthers. He was also raised in New York and LA, and he had, you know, he was an art student. You know, there was so much depth to him, and people forget that. And so you can't just sit here and act like Tupac is some regular Joe Schmo that just came along. No, that's not the case. He had it in his blood. And secondly, I think we have to look at what hip hop was at that point in time. We're talking about the golden era of hip hop. We're not talking about now. We're talking about when hip hop was actually, it was acceptable to be politically engaged. It was acceptable to be a little wild, and there were layers to your personality that was permitted. So Tupac could do one song like Brenda's Got a Baby, Dear Mama, and I Get Around, and that was all good. Right. You know what I mean? And there was no looking at him sideways like, why you
and no
you know,
social media
telling
comments.
Girls to keep their head up. What's wrong with you? Like,
right, and no social media comments.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you didn't get feedback, and the fans didn't even have a say-so in your art.
It's true.
You know, so.
That's an important point. Robin, what about that? The fans, you know, paying attention to the fans and the fans having to say so. You think people are looking to not alienate their fans too?
Probably to a certain extent. You know, I agree with what you were saying as well, because you have to have balance within your artistry, and you know, I guess trying to balance private versus public. You know, how you feel
personally.
Personally in your home with your family, the choices, the decisions that you make. And then when you come out and you have to be, you know, a public person, you're in the public view, you might have to, I don't know, sometimes balance that out a little, just a little bit more, maybe not be as expressive as you would like to be.
To be outspoken, because one thing is business, right, and the other thing is the social activism, but there's also kind of a gray area where you have to be sensitive to what your fans are going through too, right?
Right.
I mean, if you look at people like, say, John Legend, I mean, John Legend's strong. You know, his whole movement is crazy right now. And I think that if you know what you're doing and you know what you're talking about,
that's the thing.
It doesn't matter. And your fans, your real core fans that really like and appreciate you will ride with you through that, even if they don't agree in a lot of instances. We didn't agree with everything Tupac said. We didn't agree with everything KRS-One said, or Chuck D even. But they were about what they were about, and they were people of their word, and you know, you can rock with that.
You know, Lisa, you touched on something, and you mentioned social media. I feel like social media changed everything. Like, Pac didn't care. Like, Pac said what he said, put whatever he put out there, and that was it. And the only way to really reach Pac and to give Pac feedback was if you saw him.
Exactly.
So
if you saw him or didn't buy the
didn't buy the
music.
CD. Nowadays, you say something, everything is posted. You post it on social media. You got comments. I read through people's comments sometimes, and people are just ruthless, like
reckless.
So you gotta have a backbone, a really strong backbone, and a thing to not really care, which is hard. Of what people say to you and how people respond to you. It's tough. They go in.
All right, let's talk. We got to take a short break. Let's talk a little more about social media and social issues. This is Street Soldiers. I'm your host, Lisa Evers. We'll be back right after this.
People, unfortunately, are more like sheep than they are lions in general.
Let's talk about social media, social issues, and this climate that so many artists are in. Because look at J. Cole after Ferguson. He came out with this. He was actually there on the ground.
Right.
He came out with that gut-wrenching song that was just hit so many, it hit so many people. But then a comment he made about saying, you know what, we need to focus on police brutality and police excessive force against unarmed black men, but we also need to talk about black-on-black crime. And a lot of people went off on that.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, the thing is, every artist doesn't need to say anything, right? Every artist is not an activist. Every artist doesn't even have the educational background to speak, period, much less about things in
the minefields of politics and issues, right?
Absolutely. And J. Cole is not one of them, I might add, just to be clear.
No,
but
he's very well educated and very
can enunciate.
Right. But I will say this: if you don't know what you're talking about, there are other ways for you to help, and it doesn't have to mean you speaking. You can donate money.
Right.
To organizations or people who can. You can give them a platform through your music. You can put them on stage at your show. There's so many different ways for an artist to participate.
Right, without actually being out there taking body blows.
Right.
And taking big hits. Do you think the social media, though, the fear of it, and also the way that the people in the industry itself look at, they gauge social media by the fans, the comments, all that type of stuff. Do you think that's kind of having a dampening effect on artists or making people second guess? Robin, let me ask you that as an artist.
I think so. I mean, social media, it can be really brutal. They can get very personal. Just speaking about like the comments that people just make directly to you, and you have a choice to either respond to it, block it, whatever you choose to do.
Right.
But yeah, I think that they can get in. They're critics. They can get inside your head a little bit, and I think you have to, take the constructive criticism from certain, individuals. You can't take it all because it'll drive you a little insane. And that's not what you're there for. At the end of the day, whatever your message is, that's what you're there to express.
Amadeus, in terms of the conversations that go on in the studio when you're there with the artist, are the same conversations people were having a couple years ago, or is there a different kind of focus?
It depends, man. Like I said, this social media thing has really taken over and opened up so many different ideas and things to discuss. Something's always happening, whether it's positive, whether it's negative, whether it's people glorifying a fight, that's posted, or something happening on the 2 train today. Like, there's always something going on. And if you think about it, think about when you travel and how many people have their phones out. Like, it's rare that you'll see somebody just kind of like hanging out or like reading a newspaper.
Right.
Like, everything is the phone.
Right.
So it depends, man. The studio is a place of creativity. So I obviously we try, like Robin Hood said, to keep the positive energy flowing so that a song can be created in a great way. But sometimes it could be CNN on, and that can strike you or motivate you to talk about something or to create a record that has to do with whatever is going on in the world. And like I said, we all have a right to decide on whether we want to or not.
In terms of the social pressure, is there a pressure? Chuck, do you feel a certain pressure? As a journalist, for allhiphop.com, are people the feedback that you guys get?
Well, no. I mean, the thing is, all hip hop has always been in the community, and
right, exactly.
I mean, this is nothing new. So we're kind of laughing almost that people suddenly woke because Trump got elected or whatever. So.
Right.
this is nothing new. So I don't feel any pressure because I think if you do this, there's no pressure. What I do feel is that, now the masses have awakened and now they may feel certain pressures or need to speak out or rally in the streets or, and that's just human nature. I mean, people unfortunately are more like sheep than they are lions in general, and therefore oftentimes need to see someone else go out there or some urgency be imposed on them before they act.
What about the social consciousness in the lyrics? Because this is something that is kind of a cousin of this issue that people talk about a lot. They bring up a lot in social media comments and also on the show and on our feedback, which is, the way the N-word, a lot of people are still very upset that is used so widely in so much hip hop, the way women are referred to in so many ways. Robin, what do you feel about that, the way women are referred to? Does that offend you, or do you think that that's just like part of the culture when it's really negative?
It's just a part of the culture. I mean,
you see some of the videos though. It's like really.
I do, and it's hard because you're rocking out to some of them.
Right.
It's like
exactly.
What did they just say?
Exactly.
But yeah, no, I do feel offended. I mean, I think I really wish that there was more variety in terms of how women, number one, are portrayed in videos, and then also how they're received, how they're labeled. I mean, everything is a bad, as opposed to just I love Nas in the album Done when he says, she told me she loved me because I'm smart and loyal. That's a major key. Like. You don't even hear that very often. Right. Speaking of uplifting our women in that way, she's smart, she's intelligent, she's well-rounded, she's versatile. We don't get that. It's just body. What's the body looking like?
Have you had the experience where you hear a song and you're going like, oh my God, that's a hot song, that's a crazy beat. It's like the one played for me in the studio. And I'm like going, I hate what it's saying. I hate how they're talking about women, but this song is so catchy.
Trey, the song Lisa's talking about is, we were in Chicago, and Trey was on the bill, Chris Brown was on the bill, and Young Thug was on the bill, and they went into the studio in Chicago and had a great time and created a record that I produced along with The Breed called That Night. And they just talked about different women from, New York, LA, and just, it was a fun song, but it's reality, you know what I'm saying? And it is what it is. And Lisa, was like, okay, the lyrics is a little extra, but it's knocking and it's rocking, and that's what happens.
If there was a quote-unquote socially conscious song with one of your killer beats, do you think that could be a hit, or do you think the message would just be, people would be like, no, I gotta hear about bottles, babes, and you know what?
See, that's the thing. The way you put that is so great. I don't know if it would be a hit.
Usher had a hit.
Which song?
Chains. That was, it wasn't like obviously not a hit, but that was a dope record.
Amadeus, it can be a hit with you and I. Keep going.
Well, that's the answer.
All right, there we go.
That's the answer. That's the chance that we take. Like you said, everything now it's 808, which we learned on the show with you.
Which you taught me the beats.
808 and turn up and have fun instead of really dealing. And people deal with life like that.
Where you're telling a story.
People deal with life. They don't want. And I'm guilty sometimes for it too. Sometimes you just don't want to deal with what's really in front of you.
Right. Like your bills, and they're calling to cut the TV off. Right.
Sometimes you just don't want to deal with that. You know what I mean? And like you said, sometimes music can be an escape where you remove yourself from life and what you're really dealing with in the real issues. Right. And that's the challenge. So it's like, how do we turn that around? Do we just need to stand up?
No, I think
and
it's
remove
vision.
The fear. Of what the reality is, and stand up and do our best to do something about it.
Thank you so much for being with us. Amadeus, Robin Hood for Hire. Check it out on Spotify, iTunes, the whole, every place we get our music. And Chuck Creekmore, allhiphop.com. Thank you for being with us for this episode of Street Soldiers.
Yes.
I really appreciate it. Great show. And remember, use your mind. It's your best weapon. I hope it's your only weapon. I'm Lisa Evers. Let's push for peace.